Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Girivaradhari. Jaya Yasodhanandana, Jaya Braja Janaranjana. Jaya Yasodhanandana, Jaya Braja Janaranjana. Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janna Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yasodhanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yasodhanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Bosi Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Bosi Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Beautiful. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to first of all welcome all the devotees to this beautiful festival, perhaps one of the most important festivals that we have in our movement. And I guess I'd like to ask your blessings and I'd like to ask your permission to say a few words on the glories of Giriraj Govardhan and on the pastimes of Giriraj Govardhan. Now, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami has narrated to Parikshit Maharaj a very beautiful pastime which happened just before the pastimes of lifting Govardhan hill. So what pastime was that? The Brahmana's wives. Yes, this was the pastimes when Krishna accepted all the offerings from Brahmana's wives. And what did Krishna tell Brahmana's wives to do at the end? Do you guys remember? Yes, he told Brahmana's wives to go home and continue with their duties and, serve their husbands, serve their family, etc., etc. Now, Brahmana's wives, they had so much love for Krishna that they always wanted to see the Lord. Now, this village in Braj is called Batrola, right? It's a small place in Ashokvan, which is not far from Akrurgat. Now, in that particular village, the Brahmanas and wives lived. And on the day of Govardhan Puja, Krishna, along with his brother, actually walked to that village. Just give me a second. Hydration is really important. Now, Krishna came with Balaram to this village in order to give his darshan to Brahmana's wives. right? But when he reached that village, he wasn't expecting to find something which in Sanskrit is called sambrama. When he walked into this village together with his brother, he saw that everybody was really busy moving left and right and organizing things and moving around, just like at any festival. When you come in the preparation of the festival, you see a lot of people engaged in so many different activities. And have you ever found yourself in a situation where you actually didn't know that this was happening? Right? And you come in over there and you see everybody moving around and you go, what's going on? I didn't get a memo. What's happening actually in this place? Now, interestingly enough, this was exactly the situation for Krishna. And Shukadev Goswami speaks a verse which has got two contrasts in one verse. In one place, he says, Tada bhigyopi bhagavan sarvatma sarvadarshanaha. He says that Krishna is Bhagavan. Bhagavan means the Supreme Lord. He's Sarvatma. He's present in everyone's heart. He's present in my heart. He's present in your heart. He's present in that little ant's heart. He's present everywhere. So obviously he would know, Tadabhigya, what's happening. And the second thing, Shukadev Goswami says that Krishna is Sarvadarshana. What is darshan? See. So he can see everything. He can see past, he can see present, he can see future. So this is one line in that verse. And the second line of this verse is a complete contrast, because that same Supreme Lord, who is the Sarvatma and Sarvadarshan, was standing there amongst this organization of this sacrifice, of this yagya, where people were moving hither and thither, and he didn't know what's going on. How is it that the Krishna didn't know what's going on? Now, Krishna has got an amazing potency. This potency is called Yogamaya. It's his potency, and this potency does act under his direction. But when this potency works, then Krishna actually feels not knowing what's happening. And that's the beauty of the Supreme Lord. In order to facilitate that feeling of wanting to find out, Yogamaya covers his understanding that he is the Supreme Lord. Now, he's never covered, yet this is the amazing service that Yogamaya does. So Krishna then, Prashrayavanata, he says, with folded palms, he stopped his father and he asked him, so what's all of this happening over here? I can see you're engaged in some kind of sacrifice, and I really want to know what is this. And he says the word sambrama. Sambrama means almost like a commotion and confusion that's happening around the place. Krishna says, Etadhi mahan kamo mahyam shushrave pita. He says that for me, my dear father, it is very important to know what's going on. And then Krishna gives three different reasons why his father should tell him. Now, as we know, some Brahma and people are very busy in preparing the sacrifice. All the coward men, and all the people who have assembled there, they actually paused and they stopped, right? And they started listening to Krishna. Why did they stop? Because they loved Krishna so much. So even though they had to carry on with their arrangements, they stopped and they started listening to Krishna. And Krishna was very, very eloquent in his question, right? First of all, he said, all of you are sadhus. So he's telling his father and he's telling all the other cowed people. He said, all of you are sadhus, and sadhus never keep secrets. So I really want to know what's going on here. Why are you doing this sacrifice? So please don't keep secrets from me. And the second thing Krishna says, he's actually testing his father. He says, Gyatva chakarmani jano yamanatishthati. He said, sometimes people do things without really understanding what they're doing. I imagine this is a 7-year-old child speaking, right? They're doing things that they actually don't know what they're doing. And in Vedas it says that if you do an activity, you don't know what the purpose of the activity is, you don't know why you're doing this activity, then you can never be successful in this activity. So do you actually know what you're doing? And specifically related to this ritualistic activity, Krishna really wanted to question what is happening here. Of course, he knew that this is the sacrifice being arranged for Lord Indra. But at the same time, he was questioning his father. And the third thing that Krishna says, he says, is this part of some kind of a Kriya Yoga, right? A Karma Yoga, which means a fruitive activity, or it is some kind of a Lokika activity? Lokika means just tradition. It's just what people do. Right? So his father at that point paused and he said, well, I've got to answer the question of my son. And his father said that, look, my dear boy, he says Tata. Tata is a very affectionate way of calling his child, right? And he said, you know, Bhagavan Indra is there and he sends the clouds, and these clouds give rain, and this rain gives a lot of benefit for us here, for us, the people in Braj. Now, if we don't worship Bhagavan Indra, then Bhagavan Indra will not send rain and all sorts of inauspicious things will happen. And he says that me and everybody else and previously everybody was engaged in this activity. So without really stating to the child, to Krishna, whether it was the Kriya Yoga or what it was Lokika, Father actually revealed that it's just a tradition. We also have many traditions. I think there's one famous story about how traditions are sometimes made. I'll just take a second to say a story. There was a thief, right? And the thief stole some golden coins, and he was running with those golden coins away from king's army or king's ministers or police, whatever it was. And as he was running, he came to the bank of the river, and the police was closing on. He knew, oh, I'm not going to make it. So he thought, okay, let me bury these coins into the sand. So he made a hole, put the coins in, closed the hole with the sand, and then looked at the beach and thought, how will I ever find out where I buried the coins? So what did he do? He made a little, tower over the coins, which almost looked like Shiva Lingam. And then he thought, okay, well, I'll put a little flower on top so I can recognize the Shiva Linga from far away. So he put a little flower on top. And meanwhile, when he was doing that, there's some villagers that came, right? And he thought, oh, look at this. This gentleman is making Shiva Lingam and putting a flower on top. And after that, this gentleman went and took bath and went in the river and kind of, moved away from the area. But the villagers thought this must be something that needs to be done. So all the villagers came. And what did they do? They started making little mountains. And then they went around and started putting little flowers on top of little mountains, little Shiva Lingams. And other villagers came also and they saw, oh, look, this is what needs to be done. And by the time the thief arrived the next day, good luck. So sometimes traditions do emerge, but we do need to question and understand what's the purpose behind the activity, what's the origin behind the activity, why what is happening. And not just in ritualistic activities. I guess in all activities, it's good to question, to understand what are the underlying assumptions behind what we do. Now, this was spoken by a child who is 7 years of age, is Krishna. Now, Nanda Baba actually tells Krishna that this is the parampara knowledge. Now, it doesn't say parampara knowledge. What is parampara? Parampara means a knowledge that descends in disciplic succession. But Nanda Baba says paramparya knowledge. Paramparya knowledge means the knowledge that is just passed as a tradition. So Krishna at this point, he thinks, okay, well, this needs to change. Right? And Krishna, in his discussion or in his questions to Nanda Baba, actually begins to explain two of the major philosophies. Now, there are 6 darshans, or 6 philosophies in Vedic thought. Should we have just a very quick recap? Yes, okay, very quick one. 6 ones. What are they? What do we have? We have Nyaya, right? It means understanding the reality through logical reasoning, thinking about different pramanas and evidences. That's Nyaya. Vedanta. There is Vedanta. So this is 2 out of 6. And Vedanta is really understanding God and understanding your relationship with God. You got a yoga, which is offered by Patanjali. So Patanjali is the sage for yoga. So you got Vyasadeva for Vedanta. You've got Nyaya, it is Gautam. You've got Yoga Patanjali. We've got 3 more systems. There is Karma Mimamsa, very nice. And Karma Mimamsa means just do your work. Work is the way to obtain liberation, as work is the way for advancement of the civilization. I've got 1 more left. Bhakti is a part of that Vedanta. So Vyasadeva, he has expounded on the topics of Vedanta and gave us Srimad Bhagavatam. So there is 1 more philosophy that's called Sankhya. Right? And Sankhya is the philosophy that separates material world into Prakriti and Purusha, into material energy and a person who is the owner of this energy. And there's a little bit of a confusion in the philosophy because sometimes people don't know whether that person is that the supreme person or is that not the supreme person. But anyhow, Sankhya separates everything into 2, Prakriti and Purusha. Whew. Out of these philosophies, a 7-year-old boy, Krishna, decided to take 2 and test all the cowed people and convince them not to do the sacrifice for Lord Indra. What's the first philosophy? Karma Mimamsa. Krishna says, look, and I actually listened to a lecture that Srila Prabhupada gave on this, on Govardhan Puja in 1966. It's very early days in the movement. And Srila Prabhupada actually uses the same sequences, verses are presented in by Shukadev Goswami as Govardhan Lila. And when Prabhupada comes to this verse, when Krishna speaks about Karma Mimamsa, Prabhupada begins to laugh, he chuckles, right? Because Krishna says to his father, he said, look, even if there is God, he said, Ishvara sti chet, and he's Krishna, who is the supreme God, but he's telling his father, even if there is God, this God is completely dependent upon the work. Because what's the job of the God is to give the results of your fruitive work. And if there is no fruitive work, will there be any results? There will be no results. So what's more important, the God or the work? Who comes first? You know, that chicken and egg thing. So Krishna says, look, work is actually more important because the job of that deity, the job of Indra, is to give the results of work. If you don't do any work, there will be no job for Indra. Right? That's the first philosophy. So he says, Karma Guru Ishvara. He says the karma or your work is your guru and your Ishvara. That's what you should do. And Kim Indrena, he said, forget about Indra. What's the second philosophy that Krishna decides to use? Do you remember? How he uses Sankhya, right? And he tells Nanda Baba, he says, more than that. He said, everything is bound by the material modes of nature. There is Sattva Guna, there is Rajaguna, and there is Tamaguna. Now, originally, those modes are in balance. But when Rajaguna begins to activate, then Rajaguna, or the mode of passion, is the one that causes the wind and causes the rain, and then it rains everywhere. And he goes, Sarvatavarshati. He says that it even rains in the ocean. So you guys are very worried about, will it rain here, in Braj if we don't do this sacrifice? But it rains everywhere indiscriminately because it's the operation of Rajaguna. So again, he says, Kim Indrena, forget about Indra. And then what will finally Krishna tell to his father? And he says, look, for us, yes, he's coming to asking his father to please worship Giraj Govardhan. And he says, for us, our karma is that of being the Vaishyas. We take care of the cows. He said the Vaishyas have 4 different activities that they do. What is it that they do? Krishi, they take care of farming. Vanija, they take care of trading. What else? Banking, yes, Kusidam. He says they take care of money and they take care of cows. So farming, taking care of cows, banking, these are the things that we do. And then he specifically zones on what the cowards of Braj do. He said, our activity is just taking care of the cows. Right? And when are the cows happy? Yeah, Govardhan, but why the cows are happy in Govardhan? They just drink water. But what do the cows really like? What are they doing over there? They're eating grass. Right? And Giraj Govardhan actually has a blessing of having the most succulent, the most tasty grass that ever you can find. Right? So Giraj serves all the cows with this grass. Right? He gives the shelter to all the Brajavasis. So Krishna says, forget about Indra. Let's worship Giriraj Govardhan. And the coward man, all the residents of Vrindavan, when they heard Krishna say that, but we've prepared all the items to worship Indra. And Krishna says, don't worry. He said, whatever you've prepared to worship Indra, you can use that to worship Giriraj Govardhan. But interestingly enough, here in Bhagavatam, if when we read these verses, we see that wasn't enough. At this point, because when you worship Indra, there are different grains, there are different paraphernalia, there are different things. There's not that many exciting things, actually. And also, Krishna says that they use the retas, which means Indra gives water, so they also use some kind of water and sacrifice, did all these different things. But Krishna changes the narrative at this point. He said, use whatever you've prepared to worship Indra, and then pachyatam, and start cooking. He says, start cooking. And that's the first, what's the first item that Krishna mentioned? Essentially, the same word in English is the same word in Sanskrit. Soup. He says, supadaya. He said, start making, I mean, we don't know, it's 5,000 years ago, but supa means kind of a liquid preparation, like a sabji, maybe liquid sabji with paneer and all these nice things, or maybe it's some kind of a soup. He said, supadaya, start making things. So that wasn't prepared for Indra. This was, in Krishna's mind, what needed to be prepared for Giriraj Govardhan. And then he goes and start making the fried cakes, and then the baked cakes, and then different sweet rice preparations. And he says, dohadi. He said, and all the other preparations made out of milk. So he gives these directions. And interestingly enough, we'll see a little bit later in the story that the word must have spread around, because people started cooking. Brajavasis started cooking, not just there where they heard Krishna doing that, saying that, but they started cooking as far as Nandagram. So someone passed a message, Krishna said, start making preparations. And everybody started making preparations. And those people who didn't have the ingredients to cook, right, they started making preparations in their mind. Or make different things for Krishna. Right? So all of this is beginning to happen. And there is another beautiful, amazing feature of this pastime. And this really shows the kindness and love of Krishna that he has to the cows, to Brajavasis, to everybody who lives there. It's not like you get sometimes this direction and then fast. No, they said cook and then feed. And the order as such is not even feed Giriraj first. I'm sorry for the Padhati of worship and stuff like that is very different. He said, start feeding everybody. He said, feed the Brahmana. So, huyantam. He said, no, let the Brahmana start the fires, and uses the word huyantam, because, when Brahmanas do their mantras, you usually hear the sounds, isn't it? They go, hum, 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 ring, hing, ring, right? So let them do huyantam. Krishna uses this word. Let them start their sacrifices, start their fires, and then feed them. Cows, feed them. Then he goes, all the chandalas, feed them. All the residents of Vrindavan, feed them. And then the end, he says, and also offer things to Giriraj Govardhan. But it looks like it was just a pastime of everybody eating and enjoying and having a great time. Now, this is still the directions and the instructions that Krishna gives. 1 second. We'll just make sure that we don't go off track. Yes. And then Krishna says something else, which also became a very beautiful tradition. And that was something that was established by the Lord. He said, once everybody is eaten, right? So get this out of the way. Then svalankrita. Svalankrita means everyone should decorate themselves very nicely. And he goes, svanulipta means put chandan and put gopi dots, makeup and all these different things, right? And then he goes suvasasa and dress yourself very nicely. And he says bhuktavanta, make sure that you've eaten. But he doesn't say su. You may have noticed that in the other words, Krishna says svalankrita, suvasasa, svanulipta. He says, and having eaten. Now, Sanatana Goswami explains that Krishna didn't say su, which means really nicely, because the food that was prepared was so nice already that he didn't say that you should eat nicely, because everybody ate nicely. Everybody ate nicely. Right? And what happens when you eat a lot? What happens after that usually? You have a nap, right? But the Krishna tells everybody, then after you've eaten, he says something else. He said, we should all go around Giriraj. Right? We should all go around Giriraj Govardhan. He also said that you should also circumambulate the cows, circumambulate the brahmanas, circumambulate the fires, and go around Giriraj. But Krishna is so kind. If you've eaten nicely, that's what he said, how would you walk around Govardhan? Just walk? Yeah, this is probably one of those mentioning when people are struggling with finding historically when the wheel was invented. But here in Bhagavatam, he says, Anansi, bring all the carts and wagons and whatever vehicles you have. You know, you've got the oxen yoked, right? And everybody sit down on carts. Those who want to walk. Those who want to sit on the cart, sit on the cart, right? And everybody started in that beautiful procession. So you have carts and cows, and people have eaten. They're all decorated very nicely, and everybody is walking around Giriraj Govardhan. Now, this is just the directions. This is not happening yet. So Krishna gives these directions to his father, while all the cowherd men there are standing and listening. And then there's another amazing verse that Krishna says, and it keeps happening again and again, because sometimes in religious movements, people think that we just give directions and people need to do what they've been told to do. You know what Krishna says to his father? So he's just described it. He says, Etan me matam tata. He says, well, this is my opinion, what you should do. He says, Kriyatam yadi rochate. If you like, if it's pleasing to you, then you do it. Right? He said, this is just my opinion. You do, you don't do, it's your business. Well, not exactly like that, but the same situation at the end of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna narrates the entire Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And at the end, what does he tell Arjuna? You decide. And that's the autonomy that we have as, living beings. We all have that autonomy. We can get that knowledge and information and encouragement, but ultimately the decision is ours. So Krishna is demonstrating this here as well. He says, Yadi rochate, if you like, you do. But, he finishes, but for me, this will be very pleasing. Said Mayamra, for me, this will be very pleasing. And the Shukadev Goswami, at this point, describes what's happening. And he said, all the residents of Vrindavan were so mesmerized by Krishna speaking, right, that they forgot about worship of Indra. And all the cooking started, and all the preparations were made. It said almost like rivers of sweet rice and lakes of soups and other preparations were there, right? So much. Right? And once it's been done, then all the Brijavasis, they got on their carts, so they were walking and then started walking around Govardhan Hill. And what's something amazing that happened when they started walking? Does anyone remember? Something really amazing. The petals will come later, yes. Yeah, at that point, he said above Govardhan Hill, another mountain appeared. Bhuri Rupam, a huge form. And this form of Krishna, so Shukadev Goswami says that Krishna appeared as that form, Anyatamam Rupam. In Vrindavan, this form of Krishna is worshipped as Haridev. So when we walk around Govardhan, there may be a temple here called Haridev Temple, right? That's a beautiful form of the Lord, but a very big one, right? And it said that this form of the Lord has sarvato panipadam tam, sarvato kshashiro mukham. He had hands very, very big, right? And this form of the Lord, in order to increase the faith of Brijabasis, started eating all the preparations, right? Whatever was prepared. And more so, as this form was eating this preparation, now this is mentioned already in Garga Samhita, when this was happening, he kept saying, Aniyor, Aniyor. What does Aniyor mean? Bring me more, Aniyor, bring me more. He started eating these preparations. And here it also says that even those preparations that were made in Nandagram, right? Sanatana Goswami in his commentary says that hands were so big. Preparation from Nandagram and they eat that preparation. Right? And all the Brijabasis were mesmerized. He said, yes, he said, forget about Indra. This is our Devata. This is great. We've all eaten. Everybody is happy. He is eating. Bring him more. Of course, there's the story that Tulsi leaves need to be brought as well. But Bhagavatam doesn't mention, but I think in Vishnu Purana it does mention about this episode. So this form of the Lord has eaten all the different preparations. And the cowherd boys were completing their parikram. But there's one person that really wasn't happy. And who was that? The Lord Indra, yes. And in fact, when Krishna started speaking the Karma Mimamsa and Sankhya and asking everybody to worship Giriraj, Krishna had three purposes, right, behind what's going to happen in this pastime. So the first purpose was to really destroy the pride of Lord Indra. Because Indra became proud with his position and actually forgot the position of Supreme Lord Krishna. The second purpose, let me see whether I get the purposes right. Yes. The second purpose was that Krishna really wanted to enjoy the loving relationships with his devotees in Vrindavan. Right? And the third purpose is actually today. What's today for us? It's Govardhan Puja festival. Even though technically the TT was earlier, but people do say that Krishna did lift, I think it was Wednesday 2 weeks ago, but Krishna still holds Govardhan Hill for 7 days, so please keep that in mind. Then he places the field, and there are other things happen in Vrindavan, so it's very, very fresh. It's almost just now happened. Right? So the third purpose is exactly that the devotees can enjoy this beautiful festival of Govardhan Puja, which we are doing today. So, a not happy person was Lord Indra. Actually, the distress for Lord Indra came about at that time. Remember when Krishna was saying that you make all these different preparations and these different offerings? And then Krishna started listing who should be fed. So who was in that list? It was Brahmanas, with the cows. There's a Chandalas. There's all the residents of Vrindavan, right? And this is the time when Indra's anger, right, and Indra's frustration was rising because he was actually, some news was delivered to him. So he was listening whether he is going to be on that list, right? And he was not on that list. He was not on that list. And this is what sometimes can happen when anger overpowers. And this is also one of those examples in Bhagavatam where many acharyas comment, because Indra becomes so angry, he doesn't even finish a sentence, right? He calls the Samvartaka clouds. He calls those winds that operate during the universal dissolution. He tells them to go to Vrindavan and destroy everybody. He's just so angry. And then he says, Aho Srimad Mahatmyam Ganasavartakam Nama. He said, all the Samartak of clouds, go and destroy. And then he begins a sentence, and he doesn't even finish the sentence. He says, just like people who are, trying to do some fruitive work, which is not prescribed in Rig Veda, because Indra is worshipped according to the prescriptions of Rig Veda, right? They're thinking that they can advance, and then you kind of think, okay, then what? Right? So Indra doesn't even finish that sentence. He's so angry. And acharyas say this is what usually happens when we're angry. We kind of like, and And then Indra begins to criticize Krishna. But it's very difficult to criticize Krishna. So Indra says, oh, this little boy he goes, Vachalam. He's just talkative little child. Right? But at the same time, there was Saraswati Devi who was dancing on Indra's tongue. So Vachalam also means being very, very eloquent. Yes, talkative, but very eloquent. And then he goes, Balisham. Balisham is just a child. How come all these coward people, they listen to a child? He's just a child. But Balisham means also being as pure and innocent as a child. So in one way, he was really criticizing Krishna, but another way, with anger, he was glorifying Krishna. And he goes, Stabdham. And children can be like this. Stabdham means very obstinate. No, I'm not going to do that. But Stabdha means also very determined. Right? So he's criticizing and he's glorifying Krishna at the same time. And Pandita Maninam, he thinks he is a Pandit. And another translation for this word, Pandita Maninam, means that all Pandits think very highly of him. Right? So Samvartaka clouds actually get a little confused at this point. He's kind of angry, but if we check translations, it could mean the other thing. But we do need to shower, the rain on the land of Braj. So the Samvartakas begin their work, and the rains come so strong. It says in Bhagavatam that it was almost like a show, whereas their incessant lightning. It says Vidyotamana Vidyudbhi. V means very special, very strong. So intensity of this lightning was overwhelming. Right? We see sometimes lightning that comes and thunder that comes. And just imagine that this will be intensifying billions and trillions of times. Very, very strong. Tivrair Marudganair Bhuta. He said the winds were so sharp, and more so, it wasn't just rain that was falling. What else was falling? The hailstones, right? And all of this was falling down on Braj. And this is one time when, kind of also in the purpose, we see that the Acharyas discuss how is that residents of Vrindavan were subjected to such pain and such difficulty. And there is the description given that, when we're really, really hungry, right, and we get some food, then what do we feel? Yeah. We're not that hungry, we might not feel that much satisfaction, but we are really hungry. Like, who is hungry now? Yes. He said, when a prasadam comes, everyone will just feel so satisfied. So this was also an amazing feature in this pastime. Yes, it was really, really difficult and really painful. He said, Vepamana, the cows were trembling and the calves were trembling. There's that description when cows were covering calves with their heads, so they're protected. Right? But this is all because very soon everyone will derive an immense pleasure once Krishna leaves Govardhan Hill. Hmm. So all of them, all the residents of Vrindavan, they've gone to Govinda. They've gone to Krishna. Govindam Sharanam Yayu. They've come to ask for his help. Now, here might be a little bit of confusing point, because do residents of Vrindavan think of Krishna as the supreme God? No, they don't. Who do they think about? What do they think about Krishna? They're baby for the older ones, or a friend, for the ones who are together, or maybe like older brother for the younger ones, right? Their kind of feeling of love does not allow for this idea of majesty to come over. Yet they went to Krishna. Now, part of the reason was also described that they went to Krishna to check that Krishna is okay. But the other reason, they remembered the words of Garga Muni. And Garga Muni said, Sarva Durgani Titarishanti. He said, because this boy is in Braj, then whatever difficulties that you might encounter, they will all be solved. They will all be removed. So they went to Krishna. And when Krishna saw all the residents of Vrindavan, he knew that this was the doing of Lord Indra. Krishna decided to deal with the situation in his own unique way. He says, Samyak Atma Yogena Sadhaye. It's an interesting word. He said that I have my own creative ways of solving this situation. And it was very we do need to finish. Okay, we will be really fast. Well, it was a very creative situation because Krishna told all the residents of Vrindavan to go towards Govardhan Hill. Right? And then when he walked to Govardhan Hill, also it is described that by the potency of Yoga Maya, the rain where Krishna walked stopped. So there was no rain as Krishna walked from the village towards Giriraj Govardhan. Right? So his turban and his dress was absolutely intact. And then Krishna went into one cave. There is a cave under Govardhan. There's many caves, but there's one cave where you can go under Govardhan Hill. And then Krishna lifted Giriraj Govardhan. Oh, Giriraj Govardhan ki jai. And he lifted Giriraj Govardhan on his pinky finger, right? On his pinky of his left hand. Pinky of his left hand. Why did Krishna use his left hand?
Just to show because the left hand is generally weaker than the right.
He said, this is no big deal for me. Look, I'm just holding it with the pinky of my left hand, right? Because it's really not a big deal for me. Now, the Brijabasis thought, well, he's still a little bacha, he's still a little boy, right? But maybe we don't go under. And Krishna says these words, matrasa. He said, don't worry, this hill will stay up. And he first invites his mother, then his father, and all the Brijabasis to go under. And just to finish, we do need to finish, right? Is that the hill at this point, okay, Vrindavan had hundreds, and remember we read in Krishna book how there are hundreds and thousands of cows. And the hill is actually not that big. If you've been to Vrindavan even 5,000 years ago, maybe it was bigger because it's shrinking, but it's actually not that big. But it is said that when Govardhan Hill was touched by Krishna's hand, he started experiencing ecstatic emotions. And when you experience ecstatic emotions, sometimes you just change your size. And Govardhan Hill started growing bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. That was enough space for all the residents of Vrindavan to come under. And those animals, they're animals that were also on top of Govardhan Hill. You got monkeys, you got deer, you got other animals there, right? Because the hill became so big, it even rose above the Samvartaka clouds. So those other animals had some sunshine up on top, right? And this beautiful pastime is continuing. But what happened under the hill is absolutely overwhelming and absolutely beautiful, because this was the 7 days that actually said that residents of Vrindavan thought it was only like 24 minutes, right? The Gatika, only 24 minutes. But for 7 days, no one ate, no one drank, but everybody was just drinking the beauty of Krishna. And Krishna at the same time was drinking that love of the residents of Vrindavan. Oh, Sri Giriraj Govardhan ki. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Vinod Bihari Prabhu ki.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Sadhu, sadhu. Wonderful talk. We hope you'll be back next year for part 4 of the pastime.